It's time for On the Farm in Alabama, bringing farmers and agribusiness the latest news from Alabama Extension and the Auburn University College of Agriculture. Now here's your host, Alabama Extension Regional Agent, Eddie McGriff.
Good day. I'd like to welcome everybody today to On the Farm in Alabama, and today we're at the Colors Rotation in Auburn, Alabama, and I'm with Dr. Audrey Gamble. She's a soil scientist with Alabama Extension. And tell us a little bit about this Colors Rotation, Audrey.
Yeah, first I want to say thank you for having me today, Eddie. I'm really excited to show the Colors Rotation. This is an experiment that was established back in 1911, so it's been around for 110 years now, where we're able to show the effect of different nutrient deficiencies on various row crops like corn, cotton, soybean, and wheat. So we have treatments out here that have never received nitrogen. We have treatments that have never received phosphorus, never received potassium, and like the one that we're standing in front of now, never received any sulfur. So like I said, it was established in 1911. At the time, it was one of 200 experiments in the state that showed the effect of different soil fertility treatments on crop production on farm. So those were 200 on-farm experiments. And this was one that was owned by Mr. Colors, who the rotation is named after, and his brother-in-law, Mr. Alvis. And it was purchased by Auburn in 1935, and we've maintained it ever since then.
Audrey, we want to kind of explain what nutrient deficiencies look like to cotton farmers, and we're standing in front of the sulfur deficiency. Tell us a little bit about sulfur. It is a very mobile nutrient in our soils, along with nitrogen and boron. Absolutely.
So sulfur deficiency, it's often confused with nitrogen deficiency because it can result in overall yellowing of leaves of the plant. And the best way to distinguish that is that sulfur deficiency is going to come in on the younger growth first, so at the top of the plant, whereas nitrogen deficiency may start to show up first towards the bottom of the plant, and then over time, kind of starts to appear over the plant. But that's because nitrogen is mobile within the plant, so when the plant knows that it's deficient, it can shoot up stored nitrogen in older leaves to the newer growth, whereas the plant doesn't have the ability to do that for sulfur. So that's when we start to see it coming on that new growth first.
Well, one thing is that when a grower goes out in the field, a lot of times I'll have him call me about his corn or his cotton. He said, man, I put out plenty of nitrogen, but my crop is still yellow. What's the cause of that?
I would say a frequent cause of that would be sulfur deficiency. Back in the 70s and 80s, we received a lot of sulfur from the atmosphere through acid rain. So in Alabama, we received about 15 to 20 pounds per year for free. And because of cleaner fossil fuel emissions, we don't receive that much. So we certainly have to be aware of putting out sulfur on row crops like cotton and corn to provide that supplemental sulfur that the crop needs. And it's also important to make sure that you're maintaining, a nitrogen to sulfur ratio. A lot of times you'll hear for cotton, for example, about 1 pound of sulfur for every 10 pounds or so of nitrogen. And a lot of our nitrogen sources already contain sulfur, but if you're putting out a nitrogen source that does not contain sulfur, it's important to make sure you get some supplemental fertilizer out.
Well, one thing, you can confirm this with a tissue sample. Tell us a little bit about the tissue samples.
Yeah, so a tissue sample is a great way to diagnose whatever issues you're seeing in field. If I were out on this plot, for example, and I suspected that I had a sulfur deficiency, I could go through and pick about 10 to 15 random plants and pick the youngest fully mature leaf. So that's typically about the 4th leaf down from the top of the cotton plant. Put those in the bag and send them off for analysis, and that'll give me a really good idea if my sulfur is in the correct range. And the same with any other nutrients like nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus, and even micronutrients.
Well, I appreciate Audrey being with us today because sulfur is sometimes an overlooked nutrient, and we want to make sure that we are fertilizing our crops adequately with sulfur. Thank you, Audrey.
Eddie.
Thank you.